You are listening to the Fresh Take Network.
All right, well, everyone, welcome to Fresh Take. I'm really honored to have the original Harvey Hound on the podcast today. Grant Kelba. Grant, welcome to the show.
Josh, thanks for having me on. It's been a long time since I've been called a dog. I've been called other things since then, but yeah, the dog was a big part of my life for 19 years.
Yeah, 19 years. Let's kind of go all the way back. So the Harvey the Hound story is a really cool story, and that's why I wanted to bring you on here. You, Harvey himself was the first NHL mascot ever.
Exactly. And that's largely because no one thought a mascot would actually be able to work at a hockey game. The nature of the game is such that it's fast paced. There's no sideline. Breaks are infrequent, and you could miss a goal or something in the blink of an eye. So would a mascot actually work? And so I set out to prove that it would, and did this on my own, taking all the risk, and now every team in the league has got a mascot.
So what brought up the idea of Harvey?
Well, when I say 19 years, so prior to Harvey the Hound in 1984, I performed as Ralph the Dog, the Calgary Stampeder mascot. Started that job when I was 19. Making $7 an hour to perform a mascot at a ball. Graduated to doing football games and whatnot, and I really discovered at the time that times are a little bit different, and you could make a real impact on people's lives. I wasn't going to find, discover the internet or cure cancer or anything like that, but I could contribute to society in such a way that I could make people feel warm and good, and or at least entertain them. And so was working as Ralph the Dog for North Hill Shopping Center, who owned Ralph, but I always felt I could do more. I always wanted to do more. Always wanted to do more, and I really felt I was having a strong impact. So when I was told to sit down and shut up and just do your job because there's 10,000 people in the city that want your job, I took that as an opportunity to do my own thing. So I went about creating my own mascot.
And what brought you the idea to Harvey?
Well, at the time I was having great success as Ralph the Dog, and I had a friend who worked for Molson's at the time, and he said, if you want to do more, why don't you go talk to the Calgary Flames? They're going to be moving into the Saddle Dome soon. They're right now in the Corral. They may want something like this to enhance their fan experience, I guess. So they moved into the Saddle Dome in 1983-84 in that season, and I went to a few games and sort of looked around and thought, I'm sure I can make this thing work. So he made an introduction to myself and the Flames PR staff, Al Coates at the time. And so in the meeting early in that season, I went in and sat down as this 23-year-old punk kid who thought I could do anything.
Yeah.
And they slapped down a stack of mascot proposals that were about 6 inches thick. And they slid them in front of me, and they said, well, here's all the proposals we received so far. How does yours differ? And I think they had a lot of mascot proposals because the success of Ralph the Dog in the community and how I was having success there. So I looked at the proposals and I sort of thumbed through them for a few seconds, and some of them were quite bizarre and totally impractical. And so I took them and I pushed them all back at the Flames, and I said, I tell you what, let me create the mascot. Let me build the costume. Let me create everything to do with it, and I'll just show up and perform. You won't have any ownership. You won't have any responsibility. You won't have anything to do with this thing. If it works, great. If it doesn't, you're not stuck with holding a $4,000 costume. I'll take all the risk and I'll see if I can make it work. Secretly knowing that I could make it work.
Yeah.
And they said, so there's no risk to us, eh? And I said, yeah, no risk. If it doesn't work, you're not stuck. You're not labeled with any unsuccessful event or promotion. And they went, okay, go ahead, do it. And so that was my green light. I borrowed $1,000 off my mom, and I set about building the first Harvey the Hound costume in my basement. Hired a seamstress, designed it myself, went to the library. This is pre-internet, remember? So I had to go to the library to get books on dogs, and sat in my basement with a book propped open. And from there, I designed the head, and I designed the costume, and I designed everything that went in with Harvey the Hound. Hired a shoemaker to build my feet. The one thing I couldn't get was the right kind of fur, because I mean, back then, where do you get acrylic?
Yeah, I was actually interested in that with the fur.
Well, I used real sheepskin.
No way. Okay.
The first Harvey the Hound costume was made out of real sheepskin pelts, with leather backs and everything else. I had to use 6 different pelts to sew them all together to make Harvey the Hound. Boy, was it hot, as you can imagine. And so that was the beginnings of Harvey the Hound. And so on February 16th, 1984, I walked into the Saddle Dome with 2 garbage bags over my shoulders, one with the head and one with the body and the feet. And they still smelt like glue. And Harvey showed up that game that night. We played against the
Penguins?
No. Oh yeah, the Penguins. That's right. That's right.
I did my research. I'm ready to go. Yeah.
Pre-Mario Lemieux, Pittsburgh Penguins. They were not very good. And the extent of the Flames' encouragement was, ladies and gentlemen, here's Harvey the Hound. And so I showed up at the beginning of the game, and as soon as the play started, I sat down in the stands, and a guy leans over and he says, "Go to hell." And I went, okay, this is going to take a little bit more effort than I thought. And so where we started on a game-to-game basis, I finished out that season, and they said, okay, you come back for another season. And I went from season to season to, let's do a 3-year contract. And then they offered me another 3-year contract, and they ripped that up and offered me another 5-year contract. And a one-game experience in 1984 has blossomed into Harvey being at every game ever since.
So you mentioned like that little bit of a rude fan there. When did you kind of notice, like how many games in did it take to be like, okay, we're kind of starting to find something here and the crowd's kind of getting it?
I don't think there was any point in time when the light actually went on. It was sort of a gradual thing. There's people that never really got into the idea of having a mascot at a hockey game. I just asked Don Cherry about that. But I never was there for the hockey fan, and I was never there because I wanted to be at all the games and watch the games. I was there to be an entertainer. So I was for the fringe fan. I was for the child. I was for the girlfriend or the wife that just came along to the game and really didn't have an interest in hockey or whatever. So I knew who my target audience was. And if I could entertain the kids and entertain the fringe fan or the non-fan who just happened to be there, then I gave them a good experience at the games. And so knowing who you're targeting was really important, because staunch hockey fans didn't need my help.
Yeah. When you go, so 2 years later, the Flames have a cup run. They lose in Montreal in '85, and then 4 years later they have another cup run. And you're saying you weren't there for the hockey, but what was the environment there as you're having some of these big time playoff games and being the mascot in those crowds?
Well, it was great, obviously.
Yeah.
But you see, the nature of the audience back then was very corporate. And so one of the things that people were most concerned about in Calgary for We were not a Philadelphia. We were not a Chicago. We were not a New York. Down there, you didn't have to do anything to get everyone ignited. But this was corporate Calgary. Everyone was in suits and ties and fur coats and whatnot. So it was harder to get people off the edge of their seats to cheer. And so by providing the entertainment, by providing some fun and some levity, then people started to follow me. And it was great being a part of those big playoff runs. And we had a great team, President's Cup winners and having some playoff success. That was easy. But when the team faltered, that's when Harvey shone. And I found that throughout the 90s, as the Flames' popularity went down, Harvey's popularity went up. So I had an inverse relationship to how the team was doing on the ice.
And I think one of the really cool things about Harvey, and you mentioned it, I think all the charity events, all the Children's Hospital stuff, all the stuff that you got to do to interact with the kids and the kids that kind of be around Harvey, that has been one of the, the long legacy. There's a lot of cool things we're getting to with Harvey with game stuff and whatnot, but I think that is one of the things that has really endured for the Harvey legacy.
Well, and that's the thing I'm most proud of, because being at the games, they expected me to be there. But if I was doing a telethon or a charity event or a grandstand show at the Stampede or something like that, that was always a bonus. And that's what really made it a lot of fun for me. For a while there, when 66 CFR Radio was my sponsor, they had to actually hire an agent to handle all of the bookings that I had. There was a time there I was doing about 600 appearances a year. And I was doing one out of every 6 requests I was attending. Harvey was pretty popular at the time. In fact, they did a season ticket poll in the mid 90s or whatever, and Harvey got 95% of the people polled gave Harvey the highest rating possible. So I was riding a wave.
Yeah, definitely. I think even as for me as a kid when I was there, Harvey was definitely something that stuck out. And so you mentioned, when you bring on Harvey, that you had complete ownership of him, but in '96 that changed.
Yeah, and that's another interesting story. I was what was it? I was in the middle of a 5-year, or towards the end of a 5-year contract, and one of the dairy companies had approached the Flames for sponsorship, and so the Flames put together a sponsorship program together: rink board advertising, game programs, announcements, player appearances, all the stuff that, the value package that the Flames have put together. But what they wanted also was, appearances by Harvey the Hound. And they said, well, we can give you sell you all this other stuff, but you have to go talk to Harvey directly because we don't own him. Everything that he does on his own. That's fine. So they contact me. And so I say, okay, well, I'll give you signage on the costume. I will. I had a comic strip in the Calgary Herald Saturday.
I remember
that time. And these appearances, and I'll give you this. So I put together my own package for them. And so they looked at what the Flames are offering, and they looked at what I was offering, and they didn't buy the Flames, but they bought mine. And so now the Flames are like, holy crap, we've created a monster here. Or allowed him to create a monster, because now he's actually competing with us for sponsorship money. And if you recall, in the mid 90s, Canadian teams were really struggling with, the pay of the players escalating and attendance down. And that's when we lost the Quebec Nordiques and the Winnipeg Jets and whatnot. So I was called into a meeting very shortly after that. And I walk in, and there's like 6 of them sitting around the boardroom table. And I sat down, and they said, well, you've done well. We want to buy the costume. And I said, well, okay, costume is about $4,000, and I have a few of them. So at $4,000 each, they went, no. We need the trademark and the rights. And I went, oh, okay. Well, that's going to cost you a lot more. And they said, well, what do you want? And so I threw out a number, and they bought it. So it took a number of months to negotiate the sale of the trademark and the rights to Harvey the Hound of the Calgary Flames. But I sold him in 1996 after 11 years. So I turned my mom's $1,000 investment into a pretty good upswing.
Yeah.
And then I said, okay, I'll sell it to you now, but then I want a 4-year contract to run it and operate it. And they said, yeah, no problem. You're the key. We'll give you the 4-year contract. And then they owned it. And then all of that entrepreneurial stuff, the booking for appearances and the travel to the All-Star games and all this other stuff that it was, making me money around running Harvey the Hound was all evaporated now because they didn't want to charge for Harvey.
Right.
And so I just went through the motions, performed it for the next 4 years. And at the end of the 1999 season, I woke up one morning after a particularly tough game, and I'm down about 10 pounds, and I'm shuffling into the bathroom, and I look in the mirror, and my eyes are crusty because of the sweat, and my skin is sore because I've dehydrated myself, and I'm stiff and I'm sore. And I look in the mirror and I'm like, Grant, you've spent 4 years as Ralph the dog and 15 years as Harvey the Hound. You're about to turn 40. You spent your entire adult life as a dog. It's time to do something else.
Yeah.
And so I left at the end of the 99 season.
And obviously a tough decision to do, but
no, I was ready. I was
were
so
you ready?
burnt
Yeah.
out by then. Oh, I was really ready to pass the torch. I had done everything that I wanted to do in the costume, everything but skydive. I've ridden motorcycles, I'd ridden bulls, steers, horses, water skied, downhill skied, scuba dived in the costume. That was
Wow.
interesting.
What was the scuba diving like in it?
Well, it was interesting. It took 90 pounds of lead to sink the costume.
Wow.
And we did it down at the Repsol Center. And so I'm at the bottom of the dive tank with 90 pounds of lead on my body, holding me down. In fact, 60 pounds of that was sitting on the top of my head just to get me to sink.
Jeez. What was like, obviously you did Ralph. What made you do a dog for Harvey when you were making the creation?
Great question. And I put a lot of thought into that, actually. I looked at the possible characters. A dog was easy because a dog is loyal. A dog is man's best friend. Why a Siberian Husky? Well, he was a Siberian Husky because he was part of a team, a dog sled team up in the far north. He could save your life if you're part of that dog sled team. There's a whole romance of him being part of a dog sled team. In fact, I had in my mind at some point in time, if I didn't sell it, to create other characters to make Harvey a dog sled team. So he was designed after a Siberian Husky puppy. And I wanted the playful nature of a puppy in there. And then I made him comical with the bright blue ping pong ball eyes and the cowboy hat and the red pants and the yellow belt. Flames colors, but no Flames logo. And you'll notice that with all of the other mascots, they're all wearing the team jersey. Mm-hmm. I was independent. I never wanted to be the Flames mascot. I was Harvey the Hound.
Yeah, it's actually funny you notice that, because doing some research the last few days here, when you get to like the later 2000s stuff, whenever Harvey does have a Flames jersey on, it almost seems weird. Like, you associate him as being part of the Flames organization, but seeing him in a Flames jersey is almost weird.
Yeah, Harvey was always supposed to be his own entity. I never wanted him. He was never created to be the Flames mascot. He just sort of ended up that way. But I'm glad they never changed the look. And they didn't have to, because Harvey had such a strong association with the team. They didn't have to put the logo on his chest.
Well, and there's a picture that, stands so profound to that and to your vision of, I think it was an All-Star game a year ago, and you can find the picture just by doing Google searches of there's all the mascots on an escalator, and every single one of them has the team sweater on except for Harvey, and he sticks out like a sore thumb in a good way.
Yeah, I saw that picture. I remember that, looking down going, holy crap, that's really interesting. But Harvey was the first, the independent, and was built on my sweat, blood, and tears.
And you mentioned too, like, you got to do some really cool traveling with it, all the All-Star games, and then a tour to Japan. What was that like?
Oh, that was so much fun. Holy smokes. Well, first of all, my first All-Star game was in the old Chicago Stadium.
Nice. Which everyone
And
always says is their favorite stadium.
oh my gosh, it was amazing. And the fact that when you left the ice, you went down a staircase to go to the dressing room. I just
Right.
can't imagine a hockey player going down those rubber stairs to go to their dressing room.
With skates.
Yeah, with skates. And if you have a twisted ankle or something, oh my gosh. So there was that. And of course, the stairs are only this wide. So,
Right.
And then there were the pillars in right in the building. So you had to lean one way to see the ice. But the cool part of that All-Star game is that I said, well, I'm the mascot here and I'm supposed to perform, but they didn't give me a place to change. They said, well, use that dressing room over there. So I went in and I went into the Chicago Bulls dressing room and I sat in Michael Jordan's stall. And
wow.
I should have taken a pair of his shoes. What was I thinking?
You should have taken them.
But then I got the opportunity. Now, these are all invitation by the NHL. So the Flames really didn't do a whole bunch for me. This was all driven by either their sponsors or by the NHL directly. So I went to 7 All-Star games. And then I toured Japan on behalf of the NHL, performed in Tokyo. And man, was it hot and humid in there. It was like, they built the ice surface on top of a Olympic swimming pool. So they had the scaffolding and everything underneath. The big tower diving boards were at one end of the arena. So it was great. I got lost on the subway in the costume. I don't know how I found my way back, but Tokyo was just a fantastic experience and very, very warm and inviting people.
And they love those kind of like big, kind of crazy, mascots and creatures. So they must have just fallen in love with the idea of Harvey.
Oh, it was what a paradox, because you're on the train in the Tokyo subway, if you could imagine, and they ignore you like you're not there. It's like, how can you not see me? But when they want to have fun, they laugh, they fall on the floor, they just get into it. So it was a real difference. You got the straight-laced business person or whatnot, but when they want to have fun, they really have fun.
What was your relationship with some of the players?
It was pretty good. Mike Vernon used to say, hey, why don't you do this? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do this? And I'm like, shouldn't you be watching the game? But he was spending his time watching me a lot.
Nice.
So that was weird. The players, the younger the player is, and it's going to sound really bad, the more arrogant they are. It's as they become more mature and maybe have families of their own, they become parents. And as they become parents, they become a lot more relaxed. So I never really got along with players when they first entered the league, but as they matured and as they relaxed, they were awesome. They were great. And, I still see some of them from time to time. But they're just people too,
Yeah, of course. What player did you have the best relationship with? Was it Mike Vernon or?
Yeah, Mike Vernon was good. I grew up with his brothers playing hockey with them, actually.
Nice.
And Vernon, he's great. Colin Patterson, Lanny McDonald was awesome. He and his family, like I said, if you had kids, their kids loved Harvey the Hound, and so that immediately endeared you to them. Doug Gilmore, Joe Nieuwendyk. I never went out of my way to have a relationship with the players because that's not why I was there. I wasn't a groupie.
I remember when I was a kid, I met you one time during an appearance. I think it was in '96 with Ron Stern, who was just an overly nice guy and obviously had some restaurants out here.
Yeah.
So have the relationship with the players. What was the probably one of the highlights for you? Were you involved with the parade in '89? I would assume so.
Only in attendance. That's it.
Only in attendance. Okay, yeah, because I was curious. I tried to find some pictures or something about it, and I was like, couldn't really see anything with Harvey in the parade at all.
I was there, but then again, I knew when to step back. This was all about the championship. This is all about the team. This is all about the players. I only tried to step forward and shine when I felt I needed to be, or there was an opportunity to do so, or I could enhance what was already going on. And
Right.
whether the team or the players be there represented or not, I was there to augment what was being presented, not to steal the show or not to be the show, just help out.
Right. So, you obviously had a love for entertaining, being Ralph and being Harvey. Was there anything that, before that led to your love of entertaining that, eventually led to Harvey?
No, I was a jock.
Okay.
I was just really fortunate that, I was in the right place at the right time with the right hope and dream and desire to do what I did. I was a wrestler, and got my education paid for by wrestling. So I had the athletic ability, and I guess I just had the sense enough to know when to step up and when to step back.
I guess I got to ask this because, it's a little bit before my time in some ways, but being a wrestler, was Harvey ever involved in any way in Stampede Wrestling?
I did attend Stampede Wrestling.
Nice.
Oh yeah. Here's another funny story.
Okay.
So, I go to a Stampede Wrestling event on Friday nights at the Pavilion. Ed Whalen is hosting, and I'm in the stands, and the circus was in town, and they were in the Saddle Dome, but they had kept all their animals over in the Ag Pavilion. So the lions and the tigers and the elephants and everything like that.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting in the stands and I'm watching what's going on. And then it's my turn to actually go in there and do some wrestling with one of the guys because he made an insult about a dog the week before. So
Right.
Harvey was going in there to revenge the dog. So I go in there and have a lot of fun and play around and whatnot. And then I get out of the costume because my shtick is over, and I go into the stands and I sit. Next thing you know, there's half a dozen of these circus folks sitting around me, and we're chatting and talking and whatnot. And they offered me a job.
No
They
way.
said if I wanted to go join the circus, they'd pay me $200 a week. $250 if I could drive a truck. So I almost ran away to join the circus.
Wow. Just based on Stampede Wrestling.
Yeah, I guess they
Fantastic.
loved my pratfalls and my ability to throw myself around. So it was pretty funny.
So, you talked about retiring and, being beat up. What did you have any say in who your successor would be?
No, I was just, okay, now here's where it gets testy.
Okay.
My contract expired, but they didn't have a replacement for me. I got to tell you about the McTavish story as well, so remind me about that.
Oh yeah, I got that in the backstory.
They didn't have a success. All right, so I said, okay, I'll stay on month to month to continue to perform, but you got to let me help. You got to let me train. You got to let me carry on. So 1 month goes by, another month goes by. We're in the middle of summer. All the Stampede events are happening. I'm still performing on a month-to-month basis going, what's going on here? And then it was late August and I had an appearance. So I go down to the Saddle Dome and I go to my locker room or my dressing room and my key doesn't work.
Oh.
And I'm like, so I go up to the office and I said, I have an appearance here real quick, but my key doesn't work on my dressing room. And they said, yeah, we found a replacement. You can leave now and leave the van.
Wow.
Yeah. I'll never pay for a Flames ticket again.
Yikes. 15 years and then just completely locked out.
That was it. I had to call a friend to come pick me up because they wanted their van.
And I mean, look, I'm not here to suck up because you're in the podcast. You obviously deserve some kind of spot even in the Hall of Fame because of, I know you're going to be modest about it, but just, leading the way that you have now to have like a Gritty and a Wild Wing and the various amount of mascots that we have now. Like how long was it before there was another NHL mascot?
I can't remember, but it didn't take long after that. And I mean, even Edmonton has a mascot. And let's say there, he used to kick me out of Edmonton Northlands when we'd play them, only to have me sneak in through another door. So that was part of the game. But actually, the players I got along best with were the Oiler players. It was so funny. It was great. We had a lot of fun. Hall of Fame, no. I mean, no.
I know you're gonna be modest, but I just think when you look at that, you look at the Raptors super fan just got put in for everything that he does, and you've added so much more to the legacy of what a mascot is in the league. So I'm just saying that from my point of view, for the legacy you led to having mascots in the NHL and where it led to, I think that's definitely going to be considered. And then just to kind of have that unjustice kind of way out is not the really way that you want to send someone out that has such a big legacy and legend for the history of the franchise.
Well, it hurt
Yeah.
and I left the same way I came in, with a garbage bag of my belongings over my shoulder.
Yeah.
And I phoned my buddy John. John, can you pick me up? I guess I'm done. And we drove home in silence. And he's like, "That's it?" I went, "I guess so." And so for 15 years, I go to the Saddle Dome religiously to perform. I never went back in that building for 3 years after that.
Wow.
I just couldn't go to a game. Just had no desire. So if people say if I'm still involved or whatnot, it was just too bitter.
Yeah, I'm sure. Like, you have no relationship with the Flames at this point right now, right?
No.
Yeah, and rightfully so. I don't blame you.
Well, it's a whole new regime now, and it's different. And so but there's, like I said when we were setting this up, there's some pretty interesting stories.
Yeah. Before I get to the McTavish one, is there any other stories on that side?
I attended a lot of events down in the States. The Flames would go on a big road trip to the East Coast, New York and whatnot. I would be going to Brandon or to Lethbridge or to Medicine Hat to do Western Hockey League games, or I'd be going out to interior BC to do a baseball game, or down to Salt Lake City for the Golden Eagles. So I had a lot of other appearances. I operated very, very independently of the Calgary Flames organization, and that served me well.
Well, and I think, having that independence until 96 was to a benefit of you, right? Because of having the self-control of Harvey.
Oh, tremendous. I was only limited by my imagination, and I had my own comic strip. I had, appearances. I had sponsorship. I
remember those sweaters with Harvey on it.
Yeah. And I produced those, because if you would have left them up to the Flames, they may never have done it. This hat here, the Harvey the Hound hat, this thing's got to be 35 years old.
There's one in my Grandpa Bill's barn, which I'm sure you gave him in firsthand.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I guess the real legacy that I'm most proud of is what Harvey did for the costume manufacturing industry.
Right.
There's two mascot manufacturers in Calgary that are pretty much the manufacturing companies in the world. And they both started as a result of Harvey the Hound's success, and other teams and other organizations coming to us saying, "Hey, Harvey's huge. How did you get, a costume that moves so easily and so freely with the performer inside?" And we said, "Geez, we're getting so many inquiries, people coming to us for costumes. We better start to, build them for other people." And so the two companies that build here in the city export their mascots all over the world, and they still go on and thrive today.
That's fantastic. All right, the big story, and obviously you weren't Harvey at this time, but the Craig McTavish tongue rip, which is, I guess, one of the more infamous situations with Harvey.
Yeah, boy, did I laugh on that one. So, because I was finished by then when it happened. But I was in Las Vegas when it happened. I was flying home that night, but my phone started ringing at 7:00 the next morning with people saying, "Did you see what happened? Did you see what happened?" And I'm like, no. So I turned on the TV and I laughed, because way back when I was performing, as I said, I got along really well with the Oilers players, which was wild. McSorley and Tikkanen and McTavish and all these guys, because when the players would walk out from their dressing room onto the ice, they walk along a rubber mat. So one time I was trying to, get across there. So I stop and I let the players go. And one of them says some obscenities to me. So I give him the finger. Well, that just started it off. Everything that happened underneath the stands was fair game, but I never did anything to them in the stands. It was always, something under. So I'm blowing them kisses, and I'm just out of stick swinging distance from these guys, and they couldn't step off the mat to get me. So we ended up having a lot of fun with this, to the point where Marty McSorley phoned me in the middle of summer and asked me to attend one of his baseball tournaments in Niagara Falls. So, we got along, we respected each other in that way. So they were all, really good fun. So all these guys, these Oilers, they're swinging their sticks and they're yelling and they're swearing at me. And this went on for a couple of seasons off and on. So when Harvey actually got too close to the bench and got his tongue ripped out by McTavish, I went, oh, they finally got him. Because I was always just out of range. So when McTavish actually got Harvey, I had to laugh. That was perfect.
And it's still showing to this day.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And it's unfortunate that is what Harvey's known best for.
Mm-hmm.
But in one way, it was a lot of fun. And so the guy who was actually performing Harvey and who accidentally got caught like that, he phones me up and he says, Grant, this is really hitting the fan. What do I do? And I said, do absolutely nothing. You ride this out, because by next week, it'll all be forgotten. And then I found out later that the Jay Leno show had contacted him and they wanted to do a live reattaching of his tongue on the Jay Leno show.
Oh, wow.
On the Tonight Show. And the Flames said no.
What?
Yeah.
That's just bad. That's brutal.
Well, they're hockey guys at the
time.
Well,
I because I was going to bring this up. Katie Nolan, I don't know how familiar with her. She works for ESPN, and Gritty, became the big sensation for mascots. And she called out the Flames for having a boring Twitter account for Harvey being the first mascot compared to Gritty. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, the Flames got to do something. This is Katie Nolan. She's a big reporter on ESPN. They don't get a lot of attention on ESPN. This is a great chance to just kind of have fun and everything like that. And they never replied and they never did anything. Crazy,
eh? It's not all about the hockey. It's about the entertainment.
It is. And you can have a lot of fun with it.
They used to be run by a bunch of hockey heads who thought people were there to see just goals. Well, we've seen how hockey has evolved since then, with the Jumbotron and the concert, or the contests and the replays and it's just, I went to a game a couple of years ago and I was like, holy crap, this is 2.5 hours of nonstop entertainment. The hockey in some cases is secondary.
It is. A few last questions here. And again, thank you so much for your time, Grant. I really appreciate it. The flood and the infamous picture of Harvey, was that one of your costumes?
Yeah, probably. Wow. Because I had, by the end of it, how I remember I told you that the first Harvey was sheepskin.
Yeah.
Well, subsequent Harvey, the Calgary Olympics used to use, for the Calgary Olympic ring or medal bearers, they had fur-lined cuffs and fur-lined hats for the ring bearer, the medal bearers. Well, all that acrylic fur was left over at the end of the Olympics. So I bought it all. So I bought enough extra fur to build 22 costumes. And so I kept that fur in my basement and only pulled it off when I needed a new costume. So by the time I quit, I had 6 costumes and I could just rotate them. And every year I would retire one and, start using another one, because I was so hard on them. The one time I was riding a Harley Davidson and I actually caught fire, the acrylic.
Oh no.
Yeah. So it burnt my leg kind of significantly because the exhaust pipe melted the fur against my body. So I forgot where I was going with that. Anyway, so there was just lots of cool things that happened.
And then and when you saw the flood picture, though, just kind of the first thought that came to your mind with it.
I went, oh, there's other costumes. They'll fix it.
It was just so crazy that I was kind of amazed they didn't archive things in a better situation or protect them better for something so close to a reservoir. But I guess you couldn't have seen that happening.
Hey, the Jumbotron room was on the same level.
Yeah. What's your relationship with both, you talking to kind of the Harvey that replaced you, but now with Scott, what's your relationship with the Harveys as the years have gone by?
Oh, it was great actually to get Scott and his cousin Graham into the costumes. When I quit, they were too young. So I actually came back and performed as Ralph the dog in about 2004, 2005. And I said, I will come back and I will perform as the mascot if I could, do my own succession plan with Scott and Graham. And they were like, yeah, no problem, train them. And so I did that football season for the Stampeders, brought Graham and Scott into it, and they picked up the ball and they both ran with it for the longest time. And now Scott continues to run with it, which just blows me away.
Yeah, he's fantastic with it. With Ralph, we've talked so much about Harvey, and rightfully so. Just some of your favorite kind of memories with Ralph, the earlier times, and then obviously you talked about doing a little bit later on as well.
Football games are very different than hockey games.
Yeah.
I had so much more latitude to work with, and so much more freedom, and having the sidelines to move, to do what I wanted to do. Quite honestly, in many instances, the stadium could have been empty and I still would have done everything that I would have done, because I was in a world of my own.
Well, you've left a long legacy here of what you did for Harvey, and it's been great to kind of see the ball picked up by a Scott, for example, what he's done and what you've done with Ralph, and really just the way to see with the way the NHL has evolved with mascots. It starts right here. So I appreciate you kind of just taking that ball and taking it to another level, because I don't even really think in the NBA even, or the NFL, like they were really going as crazy. I mean, the biggest thing in the NBA at that time was still the Laker girls, right? They still don't have a mascot, but that was kind of the biggest thing at the time. I think it's colleges were really the only place that really had mascots.
Yeah, but even then, those mascots down there didn't do anything.
Yeah,
not part of the entertainment unless they beat up each other.
Yeah.
And we've all seen videos of that.
Yeah.
But performing as a mascot for me was incredibly serious. I did not take the job lightly. I didn't think that I was just going to steal the show or be the show. I knew my role. I knew what I wanted to accomplish. I kept my eye on the ball, and that was my goal.
And so what's Grant up to today?
Oh, property management, real estate, and I'm that's my day job, and then I work on technology startups on the side. Yeah,
fantastic.
So I've always been the entrepreneur my entire life. Harvey for me was a business first before it was anything else, and that proved to be very successful. I've had some other successes since then, but I've had an equal amount of failures. You don't get through life without a bunch of scar tissue.
And then my last question, just one of your favorite moments being Harvey.
The All-Star game at Madison Square Gardens. I wasn't Harvey there. I was Harvey the Hound. And the articles afterwards that appeared in the Toronto newspaper were maybe they should have given the truck to Harvey the Hound as being the MVP of the All-Star game, because he was the highlight.
That's awesome.
So that was so much fun. That's also the time when Wayne Gretzky got me. I was standing in the corridor waiting to go on the ice in between periods, and he was coming off the ice, and he just planted his shoulder right in my chest. Oh. And I didn't see it coming. It threw me up against the wall, and I sort of looked over my shoulder to see who the heck did that. And there was Gretzky smiling and looking over his shoulder back at me as he kept going. So he actually caught me at that one.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Grant. And until next time, everyone, cheers and enjoy the day, people. Thanks for listening to the Fresh Take Network. Be sure to follow us on social media at Fresh Take 42 on Instagram and Twitter.